The Galactic Council had always been clear on one thing. Earth was a death world, and its inhabitants were to be monitored from a safe distance. Jessica had heard the warnings during her academy training on Centauri Prime. Humans were classified as a Category 4 species, unpredictable, emotionally volatile, and possessing an alarming tendency toward self-sacrifice. But nothing in her xenobiology textbooks had prepared her for the moment she found herself trapped in the crimson forests of Dracon Prime. Staring into the pleading eyes of a dying Scareth, the creature was magnificent even in her wounded state. Her iridescent scales, which should have shimmered with blues and purples, were dulled by pain and blood loss. One wing lay twisted at an unnatural angle, a victim of the territorial dispute Jessica had witnessed from her crashed survey vessel. The Scareth, called dragons by the few species who had encountered them and lived, were apex predators, intelligent and fiercely protective of their territory. "Please." The creature's voice resonated in Jessica's mind through the telepathic link common to Scareth. "My hatchling, Peter. The silver-wing flowers, by the red stones." Jessica's forearms trembled as she looked between the dying mother and the small cave behind her, where soft chirping sounds emanated. As a Thaxian, Jessica's species was known for their cautious nature and strict adherence to non-interference protocols. Every instinct screamed at her to activate her emergency beacon and wait for rescue. The hatchling was not her responsibility. This was a natural occurrence on an alien world. But those eyes, those ancient knowing eyes, held such desperate hope. "I'll try," Jessica whispered, her translator implant converting her words into the harmonic frequencies the Scareth understood. The mother's massive head lowered in gratitude before her breathing became labored. Jessica knew she had minutes, perhaps less. She scrambled toward the red stones, her smaller stature allowing her to navigate the forest floor quickly. The silver-wing flowers glowed with bioluminescence, and she gathered as many as her arms could carry, remembering her xenobotany lessons about their high nutritional content. When she returned, the mother was still. The telepathic presence that had filled Jessica's mind was gone, leaving only silence and the increasingly distressed chirps from the cave. Jessica approached cautiously. The hatchling was the size of a large dog, with scales that hadn't yet hardened and eyes too large for its small face. It looked at Jessica with confusion and hunger. "It's okay, little one," Jessica cooed, crushing the flowers into a paste as she'd seen in nature documentaries. The hatchling sniffed tentatively before beginning to eat. For 3 days, Jessica stayed with the hatchling, whom she'd named Aurora. She fed her, kept her warm, and tried to ignore the growing dread in her heart. Her ship's communications array was destroyed, and her emergency beacon had a limited range on this world due to the mineral interference. Worse, she'd spotted other Scareth circling overhead, adult dragons who might view Aurora as a rival's offspring, or as prey. On the 4th day, Jessica heard something that made her blood chill. Footsteps. Heavy bipedal footsteps that could only belong to one species, a human. James emerged from the tree line wearing simple farming clothes and carrying a pack that looked homemade. He was tall by human standards, with sun-weathered skin and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. Jessica had read that humans smiled when happy, but also when nervous and sometimes when they were about to do something incredibly stupid. "Easy there," James said, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. His translator was an older model, probably salvaged. "Saw your beacon 3 days ago. Took a while to hike here. You okay?" "Stay back," Jessica warned, positioning herself between James and Aurora. "The hatchling is a Scareth youngling, yeah, I see that." James slowly lowered his pack. "And that's her mother, isn't she? I'm sorry for your loss." He was talking to the dragon. Jessica stared in disbelief as James approached the deceased mother and placed his hand gently on her scales. His head bowed. It was a gesture of respect, of mourning. Then he turned his attention to Aurora, who chirped curiously at this new arrival. "She's beautiful," James said softly. "How have you been feeding her?" "Silverwing flowers, but we're running low and I don't know what else. She'll need iron root tubers soon for the minerals. And black stream water for hydration." James was already unpacking his bag, producing supplies that Jessica recognized from her research. "I've been raising Scareth for about 5 years now." "You what?" James smiled, a genuine one this time. "This is my land." "Well, sort of. The Galactic Council thinks it's a restricted research zone, but I filed homesteading rights through Earth's colonial charter. Long story. Point is, the Scareth and I have an understanding. I help the young ones, they don't eat my livestock, and we all get along fine. Over the next hour, Jessica watched in amazement as James tended to Aurora with practiced ease. He checked her wing development, examined her scales for parasites, and even managed to make her purr, a sound Jessica didn't know Scareth could make. How is this possible? Jessica finally asked. Humans are supposed to be dangerous. Category 4 species. You should be scary? James chuckled. Yeah, we can be. But we can also be friends, farmers, neighbors. He looked at her with those kind eyes. My grandmother used to say that strength isn't about what you can destroy. It's about what you choose to protect. A shadow passed overhead. Jessica looked up to see 3 adult Scareth descending, their intentions unknown. Her hearts began racing. James stood, placing himself between the approaching dragons and Aurora. He spread his arms wide, making himself a bigger target, Jessica realized with horror. He was protecting them both. The lead Scareth landed with earth-shaking force. She was enormous, easily 3 times the size of Aurora's mother. Her scales were deep purple, marked with the silver streaks of age and authority. James, who tends the young, her voice resonated in both their minds. You guard another's hatchling. I do, Elder Serathis. This is Aurora, daughter of Midnight Wing. Her mother fell in territorial combat. This is Jessica of Thaxia, who stayed to care for the young one when she could have fled. The elder's massive eyes fixed on Jessica, who felt her legs might give out. The small one honored the old ways. Serathis said, She will be remembered as friend to our kind. The dragon's gaze softened as it fell on Aurora. The hatchling will be raised by the flock, but she may visit the human and the Thaxian whenever she wishes. As the elder gently picked up Aurora in her massive claws, the hatchling chirped sadly, looking back at Jessica and James. We'll see you soon, little one, James promised. You've got growing to do first. After the Scareth departed, Jessica sat heavily on a rock, her mind's reeling. The council is wrong about humans, she said finally. Not about your strength, but about what you do with it. James extended his hand to help her up. Come on. I've got a spare room and a communicator that can reach the orbital station. You can report back to the council, tell them whatever you need to. But maybe, he smiled, maybe mention that humans are good at one more thing. What's that? Making friends in unexpected places. As Jessica followed James through the crimson forest, the setting sun painting the sky in shades of purple and gold, she realized she had just learned the most important lesson in all her years of xenobiological study. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their resilience, their adaptability, or even their courage. It was their capacity to care, even for creatures the rest of the galaxy feared. And perhaps, Jessica thought, that was the most powerful force in the universe.